Good evening to everyone. Greetings of peace and love to all of you, brothers and sisters. And we truly thank you in behalf of the Baron Meditation Center for your continued support for these activities that we hold on up until now. You spend your valuable time with us, and that's something worth to thank. And we acknowledge the presence of our brothers and sisters, of course, in this Zoom channel. We have our group also in the Arabic channel with the translation with Sister Awatif. And I think we also have a group of our brothers and sisters in the YouTube. And of course, this would not be possible too without the presence of our dear sister to share the talk or to do the talk tonight. So we welcome to our inspiring talk, Steps to Build Resilience. And with us is Veronica McHugh, but we fondly, and most of us know her as Sister Wadi actually. So sister, we wish to welcome you and in advance to thank you for really finding time to be with us tonight to share your valuable experience and insight on this topic. So just some few words that we can have for our sister. Sister Wadi or Veronica McHugh is currently the director of the Brahma Kumaris Meditation Center in Florida. She is a yogi who has maintained her highly disciplined yoga practice for more than 40 years. Her natural warmth and friendliness bring instant sense of belonging to all who meet her. And I guess tonight, we would have that kind of experience of not only meeting, but being with her for an hour and a half. Her life then has been dedicated to making spirituality accessible to all in any way possible. And one of the important projects that she has done is she has been an active member of the Images and Voices of Hope in South Florida since it was convened 18 years ago. She has maintained her support to this organization, being a core member, has participated in its events throughout the world. So for a little information about the Images and Voices of Hope, it is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to strengthen the role of media. It's the role of media as agents of world benefit. So shall I call you Sister Wadi? Sister Veronica? Sister Wadi, yeah. Welcome.
Veronica is fine, or Wadi.
Yeah, and surely we will have, and we thank you for you to share your wisdom, your insight in building resilience in our life, which of course we really need at this time. So thank you and welcome, sister. So you can have the floor.
Thank you so much, Victoria, and hello to Ansuya as well. Again, the wonder of technology. And I think we're separated by maybe 7,500 miles from Miami to where you all are in the Middle East. And yet doesn't make any difference. We now have the facilities and the means to connect. And we know in our hearts that that is how it's supposed to be, that we are supposed to connect at the heart, each and every one of us, no matter what our story seems to be. So can I just ask for us to spend 1 or 2 moments, I know you have been meditating, but just 1 or 2 moments Because the thing about vibrations, miles don't exist when it comes to vibrations. They travel and nothing can impede them or prevent them. And it has been my experience this year of spending so much time on Zoom. And when we're together with other meditators or like-minded people, the energy is definitely palpable. And so just for 1 or 2 moments, forget your story and just focus maybe on a blank canvas and see yourself as the point of it all. Potent, loving, free, expansive, generous. I am that. Thank you. So good evening. Where you are, it's still mid-morning in Miami. The topic of resilience, when all of us were being brought up, it's a funny thing how the game works. And you're born in one part of the world, I'm born in another part of the world. One religion, another religion. And within all of that, in each place, each one with a different set of circumstances and various things available or unavailable to them. And what is it? Is it just a quirk of fate? And does it take time to recognize that although at one level there are differences, and those differences can either attract one, as they often do me, I'm always attracted by the difference, or for someone else, a difference is a challenge and creates maybe at an extreme level, I suppose, wars and challenges and dislikes and so on and so forth. But ultimately, I think through the process of humanity's journey, we come to realize that we are all connected at the heart. And that although I may not speak your language and you may not speak the language that I was born with, yet life has a way of showing us a lot of the same things. They might superficially look different. They might appear in different ways, and they will appear through different people. But ultimately, it is to bring us to a realization that love is the most important thing. And not only that, but in one's journey, depending where you're at, you will also discover that it's not just about a destination. It is the joy of the journey, but that the destination, paradoxically perhaps, is the same as the beginning. Because we are operating in time and in space and in a world of matter. But then too, there is something that perhaps transcends all of that. And once discovered, then my way of looking at things, my way of interpreting things, my way of responding to things may just change for the better. And so perspective is an important aspect. We've all seen the situation even within our own families, where one person looks at the situation and, you know, throws their hands up and says, we're in crises. And somebody else perhaps says, this is a learning experience. And maybe the child just laughs, you know, because it has no perhaps preconceived notions. However, it will no doubt be affected by the adults around her or him. And so here we are, maybe at one point, that clean canvas, that point of pure energy. And then gradually, we maybe knowingly, unknowingly, with or without our permission, have other people start to color in the canvas for us and will give us a set of values. This is important. This is not important. These are your friends. These are your enemies. This is how you have to behave. This is what you have to do because you're the second one in the family. This is what you're permitted because you're a woman. All of these things. And, you know, whatever community we belong to, and it really is at some level a choice. You know, okay, as mentioned, I'm born in Ireland, you're born in Bahrain, somebody else is born in England or in India. It would seem like there's nothing we can do about that. So we work with those situations. Those are givens. They are a given for us. But then within that, or as we get a little bit older, we make other choices. You know, that is our world growing up. And there will be the effect of that world on us in terms of our culture, our religion, the parenting skills that those who would be our caretakers may have had or not have had, that we are affected by all of that. But then maybe there's a point in your life where you choose to be in another world, not a renunciation of the world you were in, but in addition to. And that could be that you take on a new belief system. It could even be something like an exercise regime or a sport or, you know, a professional way of being or seeing things that you then belong to. Think about all the different families that you belong to in your life. And so in belonging, so there's like the biggest family, of course, I would have to say is probably the human family, right? We belong to that. But then, you know, reduce and reduce and reduce, and we come back to, you know, the continent, the nation, the city, the village, whatever it is, and then our own little unique family. And then you, in any kind of a world, because it's a world, there are ways of being, there are behaviors that are either approved of or disproved of. And so part of the fee, if you like, that you pay to belong to that family is that you follow the guidelines, that you know, are in agreement. There's like a tacit agreement There's nothing written, nothing you have to sign, but there's a tacit agreement that this is how you kind of perceive things and what can be expected from you. But then there is also the aspect, and each of those will come with their own challenges. Then there's another aspect, and that is that I myself am a world. Not only do I live in the world that is my family, my community, my neighborhood, my nation, my religion, but there's also my own world, my own universe. And so what is it that people will experience when they walk into my world? Now, I'm not just talking about my immediate family or people who know me, but anyone. So what is it that your world emanates? What is it that people almost, that you've trained them, if you like, to expect from you? You train people how to be with you and what to expect from you. So when they walk into your world, do they expect to be put down or criticized, rebuked, or hugged and encouraged, and so on? So part of this whole thing, I don't remember in Victoria's introduction, she said something about that part of my thing was about introducing people to spirituality or something. I suppose another way of looking at that, and the two probably mean the same thing, is not just introducing someone to spirituality, but I think the most important part of that is introducing you to yourself. So that means an acceptance of where you are, but it's not the whole story. Your whole story is not, cannot be condensed to your family of origin and your life's experience, but you are also full of possibilities. And there is another aspect which, okay, big word, eternity, that within you, there's the hidden worlds. There's the worlds that you maybe have not yet explored, that you have not yet encountered. Then there are the worlds, which maybe a better word is masks, that all of us have been very adept at creating to keep some distance between me and the other, or between me and the world. And but sometimes these masks that we have taken on so that we can move relatively freely in society, in the world that I have chosen to belong to. But then sometimes you will discover that you have worn the mask for so long, you began to believe it was you. So in this then exploration, in terms of spirituality, in terms of, exploring yourself, you will come to see these things, and hopefully you will see them at a point where you are ready to, if you like, discard them. Think about all of the things we do in order to appear a certain way, maybe to even appear, that if we let the mask down, people would be threatened by how I think or the way that I perceive things, or my ideas. And so then with spirituality, or with this, particularly the practice of meditation, then coming to, and to me, it's almost like the most, for me personally, I'm not saying it's the case for everybody else, but it's not even about me becoming a better person. It's not even about improvements, but at a very fundamental level, it's about coming to know my own self. And I feel that I do have a source or a resource that is able to guide me in that direction without being critical of me, without putting me down, without always giving me permission. Yes, look at it, explore it, keep moving, because it's not just about knowing, it's about growing. I see somebody here has a beautiful image of a fully blossomed rose. And so that's maybe what we're aiming for. So this aspect of resilience, when you were being brought up, if you think back to your parents in particular and their most fundamental teachings for you, was it a list of what to do or what not to do, and so don't tell lies, don't cheat, don't hit anyone, all of these little things. But do you consciously remember being told that you should be resilient? Maybe a situation would have brought that response from a parent, or say, for instance, which seems to be rife in our world, no matter where you are, this aspect of bullying, And so in that, along with other suggestions, then the idea of being resilient. And what comes to mind when you hear the word resilient? What does it mean to be resilient? I'm not even sure that it's been in the English lexicon for more than a few hundred years, and it might even have had a scientific meaning, I'm not sure. But it's this thing of bouncing back. And I suppose in Bahrain or in the Middle East, like Miami, we have plenty of palm trees, right? We don't have date palms though. And of course, that's always a great image of how it bends and comes back, when the storm, the hurricane or whatever has passed, and it comes back to its upright position. And I was thinking, yes, definitely, where we are at in the world today, it demands, if you like, or encourages at least, resilience. Because generally speaking, people like predictability and they like safety. And it's like when people have undergone trauma, what they will often say or communicate is that I just want my normal life back, and so I'm not sure that things are ever going to be what they were before. It's just that normal changes, and so it's learning to deal with those things. Now, another word I think in terms of this would be resilient. If you're resilient, you might even go so far as to say, if you've really, really had to deal with big issues, and who hasn't, that you're a survivor. And the other thing about resilience that I think that I would use the word, where there is resilience, then it means that you have character. It's an aspect of character where there is resilience. And so situations and circumstances will come into your life, will come onto your path. And the thing about resilience, even though we're talking about steps towards resilience, you know, I think it was Viktor Frankl who said something along the lines of that happiness cannot be pursued, it has to ensue. And I think that resilience is a little bit like that, that it's not so much that you take it on as, okay, let me find ways to be resilient. That's good. But in fact, what I more often than not see is that you discover that you are resilient. You discover that you have resilience. And how would you know that you have it in your kit bag, if you like, that you have it as a quality, that you have it as a power, if you weren't confronted by a situation that enabled you to emerge it? And so this is the thing in terms of self-discovery. It's not about finding out, you know, the masks that you might have worn. It's not about finding out you have this flaw and that defect. No, it's not how it works, really. It is rather almost the opposite. It is about hooking into a very positive and powerful energy that is going to be like a spotlight to show you that maybe you're more than what you thought you were, or that your capacity is greater. You know, the other side of resilience would be inflexibility and like where you're really stuck, you're really rigid. And, you know, that is not going to serve you ultimately, that it becomes extremely painful, you know, the rigidity. And, you know, what I have seen and have experienced in my own life, that there is a connection between what they say, biography and biology, in that, you know, whatever is your story, and you're the one ultimately who's writing your story, you're not just the victim of circumstances, but that story will even have an effect on you biologically, will dictate to some degree your health, your well-being. Yes, we could even go beyond that and say relationships and so on, but that it does have a definite effect on the body. And so, do I want a body that's rigid, or do I want a body that's flexible? So the flexibility has to begin in the mind. You know, think of a little child. Who's more flexible than a child? You know, it hasn't yet gotten into rigid structures or ways of seeing things. And so this thing then of that at any moment, in the same way that we decide what world we're going to inhabit and what people experience when they walk into my world, I am also, in a sense, writing my own story, you know, because if I don't see that, then a direction that I can go in when bad things happen is that I begin to be, if you like, that I can veer towards being the victim, you know, where I don't have endurance and I don't have perspective, then I veer towards being the victim. And so when I'm thinking like a victim, if you like, then it gets in the way of even my discernment, my power of discernment working. And the only thing sometimes that being the victim garners me is attention, you know, and maybe that's what I'm looking for, you know. And so am I choosing to be the victim, and or am I consciously moving towards a strength-based option, if you like? You know, what is the story that I tell myself? And for each one of us, we sometimes get hints about our own self. Could even be in, say, for instance, the type of movies we like to watch. If we like to watch movies, some like scary movies, some like dramatic things, some like spy thrillers, whatever it is. So it's like coming to know, what is your unique energy? What is it that you run on? You know, just like you can go to the gas station. Again, I know Bahrain's famous for its oil, but then once processed, you know, you can go to the gas station and you can get different qualities, different levels, you know, like highest, medium, lowest. Each will function, but they will have an effect on your engine, if you like. So knowing what kind of energy you run on, it's even like, as I say, what are the stories that you tell? Are you full of drama on how awful everything was and how bad, and then where you project to the, you know, the next day, the next month, the next year, and it's more disaster, you know? Or are you who likes happy endings? Personally, I like stories with magic in them. And magic meaning how there was a turnaround, that something was bad or untoward, and then there was a turnaround. And speaking of this, it brings me to a very important point when it comes to resilience, and that is trusting outcomes. And that because things are bad today, it's not the whole story. It's not, it's just part of the story. And yes, there are secrets within it, and it has come for a reason, but it has never come to diminish you, to knock you down or knock you out, but rather to allow you to persevere and to see that you have a resource and recourse. And a word that, when I was thinking about this today, a word that I'm not inclined to use too much, and I'm not even sure how this word is understood in the various faith traditions of the world, and maybe it's why I would hesitate to use it. And the word is grace. You know, you hear about God's grace, and you know, we'll use the expression, with God's grace, you know, this will happen or it will be so. Or the other one, which is an often used phrase, is there, but for the grace of God go I. And I was thinking that grace, I'm not going to say that grace comes from God, and that God says you can have some grace and I'll give you some grace, and you some grace, but I'm not going to give you any. I don't choose to see things in that way. But grace for me, yes, it's good to give the source, put it to, by all means, say it's coming from a divine source. That's all right. Better than saying, well, I deserved it. I made it, so it was me. So that's okay. But when I think of grace, I feel that it is such a wonderful thing. In other words, when we talk about it, it means that something has happened something that we could not have anticipated, something that we could not have orchestrated. And somehow it has come into this awful situation that I find myself dealing with. And it almost has rescued me or saved me, whether for moments or for the rest of my life, I'm not sure, but could be either. And so the thing is that it's not so much, it really isn't an arbitrary thing, and you can't compel it per se, but what grace needs, as far as I'm concerned, is a container, right? Grace needs a container, and that container would be peace. And that peace in the circumstances in which you find yourself would come from first and foremostly acknowledging maybe how awful the situation is, and that you're even unable to come up with a resolution at that moment. But along with that, there's also an acceptance, because what gets us in the most trouble is the denial of the thing. And when I say the denial, not that I'm pretending it didn't happen, but that I'm dictating it shouldn't have happened. Why did it happen? You know, and where we're blaming everybody, including God. And so your energy is all confused at that moment, and it is not doing anything. It is just creating more chaos within your mind, and maybe even prolonging the situation and making it more and more difficult. And so where I have peace that has come through awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, you know what? That then becomes the chalice, if you like, that allows grace to be received, that allows for another energy that is not necessarily mine, or certainly not one that I'm aware of, but allows it to come into play. You know, it's a little bit like, and although it might sound fanciful, yet you've probably all either heard such a story or participated in such a situation. And the idea that I see someone who is in such a state of abject poverty and homelessness and everything else, and I have $5 or whatever is the currency in my pocket, and I'm so moved by compassion for this individual whom I do not even know, and that I give them my last $5, and I turn and walk away, and I find $50 on the road. But that's just, and it does happen, I promise you. But it's just to show that this is in a way how grace works. You have to permit the energy to flow. And so by railing against your circumstance, your situation, whatever, and putting yourself at the center as the victim is not going to bring the kind of result that you want. And so it's all to do with the flow of energy. And so then this is grace, and it also comes from an inherent trust in your own as it unfolds. And that, you know, that whatever you need, if you're disposed towards, even in small things, we're not talking about the big gestures here, but just being kind, just being thoughtful, then it's like as if every action will bring a consequence. And the essential consequence that it brings is that your way, your path will always be made easier. You know, that whenever you need something, boom, it'll appear. Whether it's information, the person will appear. You need medical help, suddenly an authority on the subject appears. That, in other words, that your life becomes much more magical. And so then whatever's going on at the present time, and it's amazing because we're all in it together at the moment, then you can make a difference. Someone was saying the other day about the essential responses of human beings when there's tragedies and such things. And then there's major tragedies, and good heavens, I would even at the level of my head think, how are they coping? How are they managing that? You know, whether it's again as a people or as a nation or as individuals, how are they managing that? But my wisdom tells me that each one's story has its own inherent perfection, and that is to be sought and acknowledged by the one who is the main actor in that story. It's not for me to tell you how your story should unfold or what you have to learn or what you need to be. But that each one of us, as we sometimes grapple with or wrestle with our own story and situation and circumstances, and find ourselves improving or learning deeply from that, and then expressing those lessons, that can be an inspiration for others. And so it then doesn't just become that when adversity comes, either I fight or I fly, I'm in flight, I run away, or I freeze. And so someone was suggesting that we can't change things, but I think we can actually. What we can change, not that something happened. The first step is you have to acknowledge it has happened. Now, proceed from there. And so what I do have some control over, just like in a play, there's act one, scene one, and so on and so forth. And the playwright has given each act and each scene a duration of time. Time is a very powerful component. And I can, hopefully with some energy of wisdom or of love or kindness, that I can choose as to how long this scene is going to last. It has happened, but now, you know, and I will hear people say, you know, when I speak to them, someone I was with a little while ago, and she was telling me about a situation that had happened when she was on a trip to India at one point. And I said to her afterwards, the detail of it is not so important. It was relatively puny. But she shared this story again in a gathering that I happened to be in. And I asked her afterwards, you know, are you still sitting back there? Why did you share that story? You know, are you still sitting in that situation which made you criticize somebody else? And the thing is, I knew the other person involved in the story, and that individual, in the meantime, had dealt with a major, major illness and came out of it, you know, like the sun shining through the clouds. And yet the other person was still back there, the one who had moved, had forgotten all about it. And yet she was still telling. And the thing is, when you tell those stories, you're freezing people in time, and you're freezing your own emotions, your own feelings in that situation and in that scenario. Does that sound healthy? Not really, you know. And so it's like, I can choose how long this scene is going to last. And it's not to say that that I didn't take pain from it, that I wasn't hurt by it, that I wasn't, you know, whatever, maligned or lied about. But again, how long do I stay with those feelings? And then they become like scars in the soul itself. And one other thing that I've come to understand, and I know there's a scientific component to this, and I would not even begin to try and explain to you. It's kind of connected with the DNA, but it doesn't mean that the DNA changes. But what is being inferred, that whatever is the trauma that you have endured, that somehow you even pass that on, that your children, the next generation, inherit that from you, that it can be seen. As I say, it's to do with the genes more than the DNA. And so we all know how this works historically speaking, that if I identify as a race, a nation, a culture, then I'm going to keep passing on those stories of who were our enemies and who did the bad thing to us and who did the good thing to us. You know, and I saw myself just recently being influenced by that in my response to a request for help for a particular tribe of indigenous people here in the US who were being mightily hit by COVID and all sorts of things. And why was I influenced by that? Because I knew the story of how the same tribe back in the 1800s had helped Irish people who were in a state of what they call the big hunger, the great hunger. It was a time of famine in Ireland. And in fact, that tribe, and also Turkey was the other one. And so you're taught these things and they influence you and you don't forget them. And so it's all right if it's a good thing and it inspires a good action. But then what about where you perceive others as the enemy and that they did bad to our people or whatever, and you're colored by that. So this is the time, I think, and COVID is a helper in this. It's not, it has its god awful side, you know, and I don't need to tell you about all the awful things about it, but it also has a beneficial side. And it has given us time, and it has given us downtime, and it has given us alone time, and where we can reassess, where we can get off that old wheel, and even, you know, whether it was work or whatever else you might have been involved in, and that you can reassess and look at things and, you know, find that there's benefit in everything. I really do feel this energy that whether you talk about it as grace or something other than that, it's like just like air is all around us. and you choose to suck in as much as you want or exhale as much as you like, so too this energy, this excellent energy that is going to be a contributor to change. But the change has to happen at the level of consciousness before it's witnessed, before it's seen, if you like. And the world is becoming smaller. We're coming, hopefully, together, and we're learning about each other. We're learning from each other. And so always open to that. And I was thinking about, when we talk about steps, so there needs to be openness, there needs to be trust, there needs to be communication, be able to talk about what it is that's going on for you. I remember when a family member died under relatively tragic circumstances, and people were afraid to talk about the person, and all I wanted to do was to hear about the person, to hear stories about the person, that for that period of time, everybody's allowed a grace period when it comes to mourning or suffering or sorrow. But then for your own good, there has to be that change. And I was thinking about, okay, steps, and various songs were coming to my mind. And some of the songs that I was thinking of, maybe you can come up with your own, because music is a very soothing thing and a very helpful thing. And I was thinking of, the Beatles, Let It Be, that you have to do that at times when you have a situation. Don't break your head with overthinking, with over analyzing, with being critical of it. Just let it be. And so when you let things be, it's almost like as if you're giving permission for another and a higher energy to come into the scenario. And I was thinking, sometimes that what requires my resilience is on the basis of what somebody has said to me, or what they've said about me, that has been so hurtful and harmful. And I was remembering the Bee Gees. It's only words. It's only words. And how to be able in these situations, there's an expression that we use in our meditation world of detached and loving. Detached is not an easy thing, but sometimes it's about learning to depersonalize things, to see that it's the other person. It's them, and it's for them to deal with, and that it's not all about me. That, like we see this sometimes with people, they think that the world totally revolves around them, and that everybody else's happiness is because of them. And if somebody's showing a sad face, oh, it must have been something I said or something I did. Not necessarily the case. And so finding joy in your own world, and being more and more, it's a nice word, authentic, your authentic self. More than that, it's about coming back in contact with your original self. And I think in order to do that, you have to, transcend the mundane. You have to move away from all of the hats that you give yourself, and where you suppose your identity lies. My sense of self is in the work that I do, is in the family that I belong to, or whatever it happens to be. But to be able, with the thought of discovering something greater, to take off all of those hats for a moment, and to become reflective, to become reflective, to channel, if you like, a whole, I guess it's like digging for oil. Maybe you can't tell from the surface that there's anything there, but if you have the right equipment, you know, whatever it requires, I don't know, drills, whatever, you can go as deep as you like and you discover this resource. Well, I suppose meditation is a little bit like that, in that you're going through different strata of your own self, sometimes being horrified by it, sometimes being utterly amused by it, and then comes the serenity, the aha moment of, this is who I am. And then it's about, in the same way that you bring the oil, you process it, and you use it in your cars and for whatever else, that then it's about bringing that energy into play in your thinking, in your discerning, in your interpretation, and in your interactions with the rest of the human family. So I think we'll leave it there, and I understand we will do a short meditation. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then if anybody has a comment, I believe, or a question. So take off my glasses, like taking off my hat. So I'm no longer the speaker, nor the listener. This moment is sufficient unto itself. The thoughts working like a drill, gently bore through the different stratas with which I had identified myself. Whether nationality or relationship to others. Before I was born, that did not exist for me. And maybe when I leave, it will also be less important. But for now, coming again to that point of pristine, pure energy, light. I am light. I only want to express and radiate that light that I am. It's as if I've completely folded in on my own self. Everything is at last reconciled. I am spirit. I am soul. And just with that thought, I am surrounded by the grace of the divine. That heals and strengthens and whispers, you are of me. You too are peace. And I rest in this ocean of divinity. Thank you.
Wow. Sister, I would say that you have opened up the highway to the journey. Like the song also, A Whole New World. So we're talking about the song, no? Okay, so
Which
it's
song?
like I think A Whole New World. You know this song? Okay,
A
from
Whole
the
New World.
Disney.
Yes.
A Whole New
Yes.
World, yeah. So it's like I think what we have captured tonight, maybe I think it's true for the rest, is really that there is this beautiful reality that we have not explored so much. And for tonight, you have given really this very valuable inspiration. And the way you have, put the talk you're sharing, really you ooze with so much positivity. And I think this is one very valuable, example that we can take from you throughout with so much hope that you are giving to us. So thank you so much. But we have some questions, sister. So if you
Yeah.
mind to take, yeah,
Sure.
okay. So the first question is how to embrace failure. How
Oh,
to
that's a good
embrace.
one. How to embrace. Again, you will soon come to know that I love music and lyrics. And so as soon as you said that, the first thing was a line from a Bob Dylan song. There's no success like failure. And so that idea that even, and then is it perception? Is it perception that there's failure? Or are we talking about categorically in that I did an exam and I didn't get the required results, so I couldn't move on? Then to me it is, and how am I responding to the so-called, that's a harsh word, failure. How am I responding to it? And is it to do with an image? because very often that gets in the way. It's like, now, how am I going to tell so-and-so, or how am I going to present myself? And so within, as I've often seen, everyone can look at their own life and see where it appeared like as if something had gone wrong, or there had been failure, but it was only because ultimately that wasn't part of my path. It wasn't where I was supposed to be heading at that time. In the future it might, but at that time it wasn't where I was supposed to be. And so I think the big thing, and we kind of touched on this, is trust. And the trust has to be in your uniqueness, your individuality, and what it is that you are supposed to be manifesting in the world. And sometimes I feel that the drama is constructed in such a way that sometimes it keeps us in a kind of a holding pattern, but only so that we can get to that point where it can give us the really good thing. It wasn't available there in what you would call failure, that thing which is yet unseen. And so again, back to this idea of grace, you don't see the whole picture. You don't know how many people's lives have turned out. I couldn't have imagined this is how my life would have turned out, but I'm very, very, very happy with it. And I did fail some exams too, but am I unhappy about it at this stage? Absolutely not, because it might have taken me down another road entirely. So be easy with yourself, be compassionate with your own self, be able to make a joke about it. It does not dictate who you are. It does not say all about you. Who are you? And with just don't limit yourself to the failure, what you consider the failure. It may not even be ultimately a failure. Okay. You need to go on mute, Victoria. Come off mute.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you make it sound really so possible, sister. Thank you
really,
for that.
I think the main thing is you really have to like your own self. You have to get on with your own self.
Yeah, okay, sister. Starting tonight, we will, sister. How to be resilient? So this is the next question. How to be resilient during the COVID crisis? Though you mentioned something about this, but probably a little bit more to expand this.
I suppose, and everybody's circumstances are different. I think somebody needs to go on mute now. Can you go on mute, Victoria? Thanks. Yeah, for everyone, it's a little bit different in terms of their circumstances. I often say, from the point of view of a meditator or someone who's on a spiritual path, that I didn't find that I had to be so resilient, because in many ways, being a little bit reclusive by nature, even though no problem in terms of interacting and being sociable, but it did not create any particular difficulty. And again, during the course of this, my mother, who happens to be in Ireland, she got COVID, but she's doing fine. She's doing well. That I feel there are secrets yet that will be revealed, that will be uncovered. And so to be able to use this time for your own development, for self-development, if you like. And please do not buy into conspiracy theories. That is going to do your head in, so to speak. Don't get involved in that. Again, try and make sure that whatever news you're getting, it's from reliable sources. And again, check your own energy and see, do I want the conspiracy theories? Do I want to be horrified, by what I've just read? And then, of course, now I want to go and horrify my best friend or my child by telling them all the same thing. I want everybody else to get into that state of chaos. It's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting and not the best use of your energy. And so if there wasn't somebody there to all of these comments and stories and everything, would your life be relatively normal? That maybe your day would go on, except for the fact that you have to maybe wear a mask or do a little bit of social distancing. And, it would seem that now that they have found a possible, what do you call it? What's it called? The injection. So that it looks like as if things can turn around. And so within your own story, see how kind you can be. I think this is a very important aspect as well, that to keep doing for others, to be like, if it doesn't feel like a big responsibility, but almost like a role model, and I don't mean to be seen as a role model, but where someone is distressed, even though you yourself might be distressed. Or I think of it sometimes like a child, and the child is fearful. You're out walking on a lonely road at night, all the lights have gone out, your car's broken down, and the child is terrified. But as the adult, even though you might be terrified too, you don't tell the child that, but somehow you manage to bring up courage from somewhere, so that you can then, it's almost like as if you take the child's distress and fear and you recycle it into some kind of courage, and then you give it back in words and vibrations to your child. And so what am I supposed to be doing at the moment, And as I say, that if the intention is to do the good thing, the higher thing, whatever it is, you will discover that you have more resilience than you even knew you had. How would you know you have resilience until you have to deal with these situations? And, by and large, I think the world is doing pretty well. Overall, if we're just talking about the COVID crises, that they're managing and they are adjusting. So again, resilience, be pliable, be bendable, be malleable. That as things come up, but always the intention should be towards loving kindness. The tendency should always be towards solutions, to making it easy for yourself and for others. I hope that helps.
Surely, sister, it would. Yeah. So it's making you presented a way by which we can see the situation in many different ways. And we have another question: how to deal with uncertainty? How to deal with uncertainty? First was embracing, now how to deal with uncertainty.
Yeah, because it's interesting. We had a talk on Sunday. Denise Lawrence gave a public, even though she was in Germany, but it was here in Miami, and that was the topic, was the upside of uncertainty. And if the person wants to send a message, we'll be happy to send you Denise's talk, which was very good. But again, it's that same thing, we're paradoxical in that we say we want change, and at the same time, we're terrified of change. And we would like to be able to, because the factor of control comes in here, that we are mostly controlling by our nature. We want things to be the way we want them to be. But sometimes, when I was looking up the opposite of resilience, one of the words that came up, and I disagreed with it, was vulnerable. And that sometimes you do need to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And to me, there's a kind of honesty in vulnerable, because we are so used to trying to, maintain that face, give the impression, allow others to think, because this is how I appear. But sometimes it's okay to be vulnerable and say, I'm not sure how to deal with this situation. I'm feeling a little uncertain about it. And almost, I think, by expressing yourself, by allowing it to come out in words, two things. You're allowing it to come out, but you're also hearing it through your own ears. And by doing that, it sometimes even gives you a solution. Sometimes it gets stuck in there, that confusion or uncertainty, the feeling of uncertainty, whatever it is. But by expressing it through one organ, taking it in through another, or even say writing about it, then you're taking it in through your eyes, it allows a different dimension. Because I feel that when you're just sitting with it as a weight that the other energies can't penetrate, so allowing it release will give you some relief. And what can you be certain about at the end of the day? And what you seem to be saying is you don't like surprises. Therein we would differ. I do like surprises, because I know I can't control everything. And even if I could, I wouldn't be the best controller. There would be limitations to my ability to control things for you or for somebody else. And so that it's being open, it's being permissive in a kind of a way, and allowing others to express themselves as they too grow into themselves, and being comfortable even with uncertainty. Because the basic thing for me is I really do believe that there is goodness in everything. There is benefit in everything. There is nothing that is ultimately lacking in benefit. And I know any of you out there could tell me a story about yourself or about someone who had a worst case scenario, the most awful thing possible happened to them. And somehow, they could never have imagined it. They could never have requested it or dreamt it. But somehow out of that fire, something else took shape. It's kind of like, again, as they say, that idea that you have to put the metal on the fire, intense heat, in order for the pure silver or the pure gold to come into its expression. And so this is what's happening. I can deal with the petty things in my life, but my life is not petty. My life is a big life. I'm not needing anybody else to tell me it's a big life, but for me, it's my life. And so I'm not going to give all my energy to worrying and being fearful and being hesitant. And so it's kind of like drop all of these, and maybe you were even encouraged as a young person that you should be afraid of this and you should be afraid of that, and that everything, and the kind of person that everything is so ordered in their life. But usually that too can even show that they're fearful of disorder. But sometimes there needs to be the disorder too in order for you to see your own strength. Yeah. You can't control everything. All right, do we leave it there?
Yes,
I have
Sister
another
Aurelie.
call.
Yeah, so I guess we have everyone have gotten a lot of really valuable insights where we can take off to be able to build that resilience, as you have said, that's all within us. So you just presented a very integrated way of looking the broad spectrum of human life to embrace the beauty as you did for us tonight. That truly you have opened up a way to embrace the beauty of life in totality. And this is a very beautiful moment you shared from your heart, sister. And truly, in behalf of everyone, we thank you and we look forward to meeting you here if you would come
It's
or another
one of
sharing. Yeah.
one of the countries that I have not visited yet, physically speaking. So any country that I go to now on Zoom that I haven't been to before, there's not a lot of them, but that's now on my itinerary. So thank you all for joining us. Om Shanti. Salam Alaikum. Bye.